In the year 2212, as newscasts filled the air with reports of criminal cases, scandals, and natural disasters, a woman, Althea, found herself contemplating the meaning of home. Her hands then raised an electronic tablet, its screen displaying a dire breaking news alert. The Terran Cosmic Research Center had announced an unprecedented drop in the sun's hydrogen level, dramatically shrinking humanity's window for survival to mere decades. This revelation starkly contradicted earlier predictions of a millennium. In response, 47 countries, including her own, Eden Country, had accelerated spaceship development. These vessels were meticulously designed to transport over 10 billion Terran inhabitants, along with the genetic material and live specimens of all known species, with the aim of preserving biodiversity during the inevitable migration. With a soft sigh, the sounds and lights of the broadcast abruptly ceased. Althea sat languidly on her chaise lounge, her relaxed posture exuding confidence as she absently patted her pregnant belly. She had an unsettling intuition. There wouldn't be enough time. Without a miracle, they would all perish, and her children might never even experience the world. A pleasant voice drifted from the kitchen. It was her nanny, carrying a silver tray with a warm cup of milk, which she carefully placed on a side table before standing respectfully a few meters away. Althea's voice expressed gratitude to the nanny. Althea simply lifted her upper body to sip her milk, not fully sitting up. The nanny gazed at the girl she had watched grow from a thin orphan into a woman. Her pregnancy added a soft femininity, a stark contrast to the tomboy she had been for years. Motherhood, it seemed, had changed even the stubborn Althea. Althea mused about hoping for news of a particular individual, but instead, the broadcasts focused on the galaxy's potential demise. The nanny began to speak, but Althea raised a hand, stopping the topic. She instantly regretted bringing it up, acknowledging the pain of her husband's disappearance months ago. He had been called away on a top-secret government mission nearly half a year prior. While a month or so of no contact was normal, 2 months had passed with no news, and a daily dread had consumed her. Eventually, she couldn't bear it any longer and began contacting the higher-ups. Her previous contributions had given her connections and power within the government, preventing immediate dismissal, but they continuously delayed any meeting. Finally, a brave media reporter, an old friend, exposed the truth. Hundreds of soldiers, including her husband, had gone missing less than a month into their mission and were presumed dead. The news felt like being plunged into cold water. She immediately confronted headquarters, demanding answers. The shock had almost caused a miscarriage, making it the worst day of her life. She hadn't even known she was pregnant. Fortunately, her brother was there to rush her to the hospital, saving her life and her unborn children. After recovering, Althea and her brother dedicated their business profits to finding answers, even resorting to illegal channels. Their reporter friend eventually provided some risky clues. With her brother's help in managing public opinion and slowly revealing their findings, the government finally succumbed to public pressure, offering an answer none of them had anticipated. Months prior, an unusual spatial fluctuation had occurred, from which hordes of strange animalistic monsters emerged. 300 soldiers from 10 different countries, including her husband, had been sent on a mission to confront them. Not a single one had returned, nor had any trace of the dozen tanks and bombers they deployed been found. No one still knew what truly happened. Soon after, the sun's problem was confirmed, making it even harder to get answers from the government. Althea and other affected families funded their own searches, but to no avail. Now, with the sun's crisis escalating, the issue of the missing soldiers had been completely sidelined. Except for their families and friends, no one remembered them anymore. The nanny expressed her certainty that the master was fine and would definitely return. Though Althea's husband was often absent, the nanny, with her experienced eye, had witnessed the depth of his love for his wife. The kind of love that would make him jump off a cliff for a dangerously placed flower. She knew confirming his death would break Althea, so for now, they both clung to the firm belief that he was alive somewhere. Althea hummed, her bright eyes reflecting her unwavering conviction. She then turned to the older woman, expressing sincere gratitude for her presence. The nanny had essentially raised her and her 2 siblings, as their parents were already dead. Now, with her parents gone, her husband missing, and her brother soon to have his own life, Althea couldn't imagine what she would do without the nanny. The older woman smiled warmly. At that moment, the digital lock on the main door clicked, and they both turned to see a handsome, smiling face. Althea's expression softened as she smiled back, acknowledging her brother's return and making space for him. Ansel gazed at her for a few seconds before walking over and settling beside her. He smiled and handed her a small box of snacks he'd brought. Althea's eyes softened at the sight of her brother. The once childish boy had grown. He greeted her with a wide grin and saying, "Long time no see." Althea playfully indicated that her brother, Ansel, had visited only 2 days prior, a mere 48 hours earlier. She shook her head in amusement, turning her attention to the varied fruit pastries he had brought, her favorites, which paired perfectly with her milk. She quickly enjoyed one herself, and then, with familiar ease, offered another to Ansel, who accepted it readily, reminiscent of a cute small hamster. Ansel, her adoptive brother since she was 9, shared a bond with Althea that surpassed many blood relatives. This deep connection, also extending to her now missing husband who had been adopted with her, stemmed from the precarious childhood situations they had navigated together. These shared experiences had left a significant impression on Ansel, causing him to frequently act like a child around her, a habit that greatly displeased her husband. Despite his growth into adulthood, his maturity around Althea often remained childlike, much like former high school classmates who revert to teenage behavior at reunions. Althea noticed a pastry shaped like a smiling cartoon dog and chuckled. She then glanced at the digital clock, noting it was not yet 8 a.m., and wondered aloud about the bakery's early opening. Ansel casually mentioned the owner was an ex-girlfriend, leading Althea to roll her eyes at his frequent romantic entanglements. She and her husband had often observed him with different women, and the nanny frequently lectured him about it. Sometimes her husband would even take Ansel to the backyard for training sessions. Althea pondered what independent strengthening activities might have led to his becoming such a player. Fortunately, his exes remained platonic friends, saving Althea from having to intervene herself. Sensing her judging stare, Ansel shrugged, attributing his behavior to being too charming. Althea responded with an exaggerated look of disgust, then addressed her unborn children, explaining that their uncle simply lacked attention. Ansel dramatically clutched his heart, feigning pain, and leaned in to whisper to Althea's stomach, declaring his charm and offering to bless his future niece and nephew with his amazingness, assuring them he had already bought toys. Althea rolled her eyes and attempted to redirect his monologue, stressing the importance of prenatal education. She began to recall a saying from their mother, but her voice faltered as a poignant thought arose, the longing for their parents to be there. Althea felt a wave of overwhelming emotion, tearing up slightly and blaming her pregnancy hormones for the sudden shift. Unable to control the surge of feelings, she began to sob softly, recounting how her mother used to praise her birth parents for the excellent prenatal care they must have given her. Ansel's playful expression vanished, replaced by a somber frown, his heart heavy with grief for his biological parents. A period of silence fell over the three of them, Althea, Ansel, and the nanny, a shared moment of remembrance for their lost loved ones. Ansel's parents had been kind and loving individuals. His mother, a history professor, and his father, a top pharmaceutical researcher, had provided abundantly for all three children, both materially and emotionally. Despite their demanding careers, they tragically perished during a worldwide radiation wave, an EMP-like event that caused their plane, one of thousands flying at the time, to crash. This incident was also the first subtle indication that the sun was dying faster than anticipated, though this was not publicly announced then. Althea had always suspected her husband's top-secret mission was connected to this very event. After some time, Althea composed herself, wiping her eyes and feeling a pang of guilt for reigniting the painful memories. She then turned to her brother, asking about how the company was doing and about the deal that was to happen. Ansel confirmed the deal was indeed scheduled for that day, mentioning that the order had even increased. Althea nodded approvingly. 2 years prior, she and Ansel had founded their own company, with her providing the technological expertise and formulas, and Ansel managing the operations. Althea had harbored a lifelong fascination with plants, not just in growing them, but also in understanding their effects and combinations. This passion frequently led to accidental poisonings, landing her in the hospital many times. She often mused that if she hadn't been so young and, in her husband's words, cute, the headmistress might have expelled her for the excessive medical expenses. During one of her many hospital visits for poisoning, a visiting doctor serendipitously encountered her. Amused by the cause and effect of her ailment, he gifted her a comprehensive encyclopedia detailing Terran plants, their effects, and effective combinations. She later discovered that this benevolent old man, a pioneer in reviving botanical medicine, had been at the hospital for a checkup when they first met. It was believed that had Ansel's childhood incident not occurred, as it did, the doctor might have adopted her. Nevertheless, they maintained contact until his passing a few years ago. Althea demonstrated exceptional talent in this field, specializing in biology and botany upon entering college at age 17. She then utilized her thesis project and other formulas to develop a range of successful beauty and health products. Over the past 2 years, she created formulas for treating acne scars, boosting stamina, improving eyesight, and enhancing skin smoothness. Ansel, with a smug expression, emphasized the substantial profits the deal would generate. The agreement was with Delo country, a closed nation to the south that typically eschewed foreign businesses. This marked their second major client after the military, significantly bolstering the company's prestige. Since dealing with Delo country was not illegal in Eden country, Althea had no reservations. Moreover, due to the other party's desire for secrecy, they were willing to pay double the market price. Ansel confidently asserted his ability to secure even better deals. Althea nodded, reassured, then inquired about his flight time. He tentatively checked the time, indicating his flight was in a few hours, then turned to her, extending his arms for a hug. She naturally embraced him, urging him to be careful. He smiled, holding her a little tighter. That afternoon, after receiving confirmation of Ansel's safe arrival, Althea was overcome by pregnancy-induced lethargy. The nanny gently roused her, suggesting she rest in her bedroom. Althea blinked, realizing she had drifted off on the sofa. She lazily sat up and stretched, accepting the nanny's offer to prepare dinner for her awakening. Althea then bowed the nanny good night, and the older woman chuckled softly before returning the sentiment. Althea went to bed for a prolonged nap, and for a while, it was peaceful. She dreamt of her childhood, playing tag with her husband. However, just as she was about to catch him, she was abruptly awakened by an indescribable force. It felt like an earthquake, yet only the air seemed to shake. She sat up so quickly that she became dizzy. Closing her eyes to steady herself, she looked around to identify what had disturbed her. Confused, she checked her phone, noting the time, 8:34 p.m., and quickly realized there was no signal. Then she heard terrifying screams erupting from various directions outside. A chilling sense of foreboding crept up her spine. She rushed toward the nanny's room, her hand instinctively on her stomach as she moved. She gently knocked on the door, asking about her aunt's well-being. As she did so, she heard disturbing scraping sounds, followed by a low growl from within. Her instinct screamed that something dangerous was inside. She quickly spotted a broom, decisively grabbing its shaft and removing the brush. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hand on the doorknob and turned it. The door opened to reveal a strange, yet disturbingly familiar creature. It stood in an unnatural posture, its body contorted at odd angles, and its skin festered with pus. Hearing her presence, it turned, and Althea's eyes met its lifeless gaze. Bile rose in her throat, but she swallowed it, as a horrifying realization dawned upon her. She knew who this creature was. Her heart plummeted, her soul trembled, and tears welled in her eyes as her body shivered with overwhelming dread. Althea stared in a daze at the horrific creature that was once her nanny, tears streaming down her face. Even as it lurched toward her with an unnatural, staggering gait, she was frozen in shock. Only when it was an arm's length away did her instincts kick in, and she struck the creature with the metal broomstick. The body fell, its neck grotesquely twisted. For a moment, Althea felt the impulse to check on her, but the head suddenly turned back at a terrifying angle. Its lifeless eyes stared at her with hunger. Without straightening its legs, the creature dragged itself toward her, its mouth agape. With no time to mourn, Althea moved on instinct, striking the creature's head with all her strength to prevent its body from being defiled any further.
+5 experience, +5 copper coins.
The sudden sound made her flinch. A message appeared, visible only to her.
Congratulations, Terran, for activating the Universe Assistance System.
Althea could not even begin to respond.
Your planet XZ8912, locally known as Terran, is the only planet in the G239 and U834 galaxies to have intelligent civilizations. It was therefore judged to be an important endangered planet by the universe. Galaxies G239 and U834 will be deemed uninhabitable in less than 24 hours due to the current condition of its central star. In less than 24 hours, to preserve remaining life, all surviving indigenous creatures will be immigrated to the great continent of Zeno. Please note that items in the system-provided backpack can be taken with you.
Althea, a woman of great intellect, was completely unable to process the mechanical voice's message. She called out, asking what Zeno was, what the migration meant, and why her planet would perish. There was no reply. She noticed a holographic screen in front of her, following her gaze. At the bottom left were icons for a backpack, a person, and a sword. At the top right, a counter displayed the time remaining. She surmised this was the countdown to the migration mentioned by the system. She clicked the backpack icon, and a floating virtual box, 1 cubic meter in size, appeared. Remembering the voice's words about items in the backpack being taken with her, she wondered how to use it. She placed a hand on both her phone and the broom handle, and by visualizing them in the space, she was able to transfer them into the virtual box. Although she would normally be fascinated by this technology, her thoughts kept returning to the body of her nanny. She sighed, straightened her posture to gather her resolve, and approached the corpse. She knew a burial was futile for a dying planet, but she respectfully moved the body to the bed, making it appear as though she were just sleeping. Althea closed the nanny's eyes, bowed her head, and offered a silent prayer, expressing her gratitude and love for all the care the older woman had given her. After leaving the room, Althea went to the living room. She tried to watch the news, but all channels were black. Still shaken, she settled onto her chaise lounge, allowing herself a brief moment to breathe before thinking about her next steps. She clicked on the person icon, and a set of her stats appeared before her. The status confirmed her weakened state, which explained all the negative signs. Her gaze then shifted to the final icon, the sword. Upon clicking it, a virtual doll of herself with her current equipment appeared. The equipment list reminded her of the games her brother used to play. She was not a gamer herself, but this was a familiar sight. She noticed her stats again. Despite the recent trauma, she felt strangely energized, her body stronger and quicker than she remembered. She had hit her nanny's head with enough force to kill her, something she knew was beyond her normal physical capabilities. Even with her self-defense training, she wasn't sure if it was adrenaline or if her body had somehow improved. Putting that thought aside for now, she explored the final icon, the wallet.
Wealth: 0 gold, 0 silver, 5 copper.
Her millions of digital dollars, she realized, were now useless. She sat up, determined to create a plan for the next 24 hours. Without knowing their destination or what resources would be available, she needed to be well prepared to maximize her survival chances, filling the small 1 cubic meter space with essentials. The 0 gold, 0 silver, 5 copper in her stats likely represented a new currency in this other world. As Althea gently patted her stomach to calm herself, she froze. A chilling realization dawned on her. Her stomach felt larger than it had before. Althea was momentarily paralyzed by a terrifying thought, that her children might have turned into monsters. But just before she could fully descend into a panic, a gentle kick from within her womb brought her back to her senses. Instinctively, she placed her hands on her stomach, and the next kicks were soft and soothing, as if her babies were reassuring her. For the first time since the ordeal began, she smiled, finding solace in the fact that her children were still with her, a reason to be prepared for what was to come. She immediately headed to the kitchen to get some food. Although she wasn't a good cook herself, her father, auntie, and husband had all been excellent at it. She was relieved to find that the nanny, God bless her soul, had prepared several plates of ready-to-eat meals for her. Althea quickly stored all the food and non-perishable goods from the pantry into her backpack, filling a small portion of its space. The perishable items, however, posed a problem. The most pressing issue on her mind, though, was the currency. The fact that the system had its own currency meant it was possible to acquire it on Earth, but she knew her digital money would be useless. She had to find out if physical cash or other valuables could be converted. She also needed to acquire medicine, but she wondered if it would even work if her body had changed. Stopping her spiral of fruitless speculation, she formulated a plan and headed to her room. She went to her safety deposit box, her fingers pressing buttons to reveal a few stacks of emergency cash. She held the paper money in her hand and, with a moment of hesitation, tried to transfer it into her backpack space, but nothing happened. She then took a handful of silver and gold jewelry, gifts from clients and friends, and placed them in the space. They were simply stored there. After a moment of thought, she took them out and repeated the process, this time with the intent to sell them.
A total of 230 grams of silver, 100 grams of gold. Would you like to convert it to coins? Yes or no?
She clicked yes.
Received. +1 gold coin, +2 silver coin, +30 copper coins.
Althea then converted the rest of her jewelry, except for the pieces from her family and husband, which she kept safe in the backpack.
121 carats of Class E precious gems, 8 carats of Class A gems. Would you like to convert it to coins, yes or no?
She chose no and converted the gems separately. The colorful ones yielded a total of 51 silver coins, while the few carats of diamonds earned her a remarkable 5 gold coins. She concluded that gems with a higher Mohs scale value were more valuable in the other world. Her eyes then fell on the safe itself.
50 kilograms of non-ether, Class C precious metal detected. Would you like to convert it to coins? Yes or no?
She clicked yes.
Received, plus 69 silver coins.
An eyebrow raised in interest, she looked around the room at the family antiques, feeling as though they were watching her. Apologizing to her ancestors, she attempted to convert them. But, like the paper money, they were judged to have no value. Regretfully, she removed the useless items, including the cash, from her backpack to save space. She checked her wallet again.
Wealth, 6 gold coins, 122 silver coins, 30 copper coins.
She momentarily regretted her modern reliance on digital money. Unsure of how much this wealth would get her, she knew she needed to fill her 1 cubic meter backpack with as many supplies as possible. Stretching, she glanced at the floating clock. The sight of the time spurred her to action. She looked out the window at the dark scenery, which should have been peaceful. Instead, it was filled with horrifying screams. She knew she could only rely on herself now. Grabbing the handy broom shaft from her backpack, she headed toward the door, having rested long enough. Emerging from her house, Althea mentally assessed her surroundings. She lived in an upscale suburban neighborhood, a mix of new wealth, politicians, and celebrities. The lots were large for the city, and the land was incredibly valuable. Her family's ownership of their home was due to her mother's grandparents buying the property when land values were low. When a developer later tried to buy the lot for a low price, her mother's academic standing and network allowed them to negotiate a fair deal, allowing them to join the development. Althea was deeply moved by her adoptive parents, including her and her husband in the will, which left the three of them with joint ownership. However, with her husband away on missions and her brother on business trips, the house was often empty. There were 47 houses in their villa area, all belonging to the well-off. Althea realized that while they had been wealthy in the old world, their digital assets were now useless. She set her sights on the house to her left, avoiding the one on her right where she could hear women screaming. She had no intention of robbing people who were still alive, nor would she risk her own life to save others who might become dependent on her. Forgiving herself for her seeming coldness, she remembered her time in the orphanage and how it exposed her to the darker side of society, keeping her from being an innocent idealist. The people from the house on the right were particularly snobbish, and their daughters had previously ogled her husband like hungry hyenas. She ignored the screams and the zombies they attracted, turning toward her own gate. Cautiously, Althea checked outside the gate. After a second, she slowly opened and then quickly slammed it shut as 5 zombies tried to push their way in. She stepped back, a little scared, but then remembered the potential rewards of experience and coins. Gathering her courage, she used the sharp end of her broom shaft to poke the trapped zombies in the eyes. With their arms stuck in the gate, they were easy targets, and she quickly dispatched them one by one.
+5 copper coins, +5 experience.
The more she killed, the more she earned. The process was reminiscent of an arcade game, but the rancid smell was overwhelming, almost causing her to vomit. She ran back inside for some water, saving her bottled supply, and put on a face mask to protect herself from the worsening stench. An idea was brewing in her mind. Smell. 10 minutes later, Althea looked at the bodies stuck on the gate with a complicated expression, questioning her decision. However, she glanced at the time and resolved to be more decisive. Holding her breath, she cut off the arms of the zombies that were within her property line. She then wrapped herself in blood and even tied one of the severed arms around her belly like a belt, feeling sickened and wondering if she would give birth prematurely from the disgust. Gathering her resolve and holding her breath, she slowly opened her gate, hiding behind its panel. A few zombies entered before she quickly locked the gate again. 3 more monsters got in during that time, while a dozen others were stopped by the sturdy fence. Althea's concern grew as she realized just how many monsters were already in their sparsely populated neighborhood, and she dreaded to think what the city would be like. Despite her inner thoughts, she watched the monsters with full alert. They walked aimlessly in her garden, and she stood perfectly still. One began to drag its feet toward her, and her grip on the broomstick tightened, her heart pounding. The monster made guttural noises as it explored the area in front of her, seemingly not seeing Althea. She took the opportunity to study it. It appeared to be a young teenager, as were the other zombies that had entered. She could see the pus and decaying skin on its face, and she felt nauseous again. As it turned, it suddenly twisted its head to face her, causing her heart to plummet, but it only paused for a moment before looking away. Althea took a breath and attacked it while it was distracted, poking the shaft into one of its orifices.
+5 copper coins, +5 experience.
The noise attracted the other 3 monsters, but they stopped when the sound ceased. Althea deduced that the creatures were blind and relied on sound as their primary sense, with a sense of smell not much better than when they were human, as evidenced by the severed arm successfully masking her scent. Taking note of her discovery, she quickly killed the remaining zombies.
Congratulations for leveling up to level 1.
As a surge of energy radiated from her body, the zombies outside went into a frenzy, attacking the gate with renewed aggression. The gate held against their sheer numbers, but Althea's mood improved. She felt her body become lighter, more energetic, and her senses sharper, though this also intensified the terrible stench. Ignoring it, she looked at the dozens of monsters, her confidence growing as she began to see them as targets. She had rested enough, and now it was time to hunt. Althea had just finished killing dozens of zombies, a physically taxing endeavor, especially in her pregnant state. She was grateful her gate had held up, allowing her to deal with the creatures a few at a time. She had methodically taken down the ones within reach through the gaps, and then the ones that climbed over the corpses of others. The noise she made successfully attracted and eliminated every zombie on her street. She was surprised by the sheer number, as the neighborhood's average occupancy should not have produced so many. She was unaware that a large reunion party had been held by her neighbors, with many guests caught outside during the event, all dressed in old-school party attire. As Althea paused, a new time and a stats list appeared before her. Her eyes paused on the spirit stat, which she correctly surmised had to do with her stamina. She decided it was best not to find out what would happen if it got too low. She then went back to the house to take a little rest. After a half hour, she felt relieved to see that her spirit had risen to 150. Now that she had an idea of her recovery rate, she resumed her adventure. She felt stronger and more agile, but her pregnancy made her cautious. Using a ladder, she crossed over the wall into her neighbor's property. This neighbor was a former politician with a younger wife and sister-in-law, who were likely out for the night given their active social lives. The house was a classic 3-story home with intricate designs. Checking for monsters, she moved stealthily toward the house. Her steps were lithe and light, and her makeshift weapon was ready. Soon she heard rustling and growling. She paused and the sound stopped. Her armor of zombie goo was still effective, as the two servant zombies she encountered did not attack her. She took them down with ease. Her self-defense skills, she felt, were improving with practice. She reached the front door and, to be sure, called out to check if anyone was home. Receiving no reply, she forced the door open. The moment she crossed the threshold, a sudden gust of wind whipped toward her from the shadows. She barely managed to block the sharp teeth of a lunging toy dog with her broom shaft. The creature's rotten breath, combined with the smell of its decaying body, nearly caused her to black out, but she fought off her nausea. She defended herself, swinging the shaft until she connected with the creature's skull, then kicked it away. Another creature lunged, and she hit its ribcage. The shadows were two zombie dogs. Their eyes were vacant and glazed, and their growls showed their hunger. The dogs moved with a speed that the previous zombies could not match. Althea, no longer taken by surprise, managed to avoid their sharp fangs. The dog she had hit on the head was slower and much easier to handle. With adrenaline coursing through her, she delivered a powerful blow that ended one of the dogs. The other dog blocked her weapon with its teeth, and she could feel the metal handle bending. Fearing she would lose her only weapon, she fought for control, and the struggle moved them inside the house. The dog's grip was too strong. Instead, she hit the rod with the dog against an art feature with sharp edges. The dog's body splattered with blood, and it finally released its grip. Althea repeatedly struck the creature until it was dead.
Plus 10 copper, plus 10 experience.
Exhausted, she quickly closed the door to prevent new monsters from being attracted by the noise. She took a moment to catch her breath, realizing that animals also turned into monsters and were inherently more dangerous. Most alarmingly, they could smell her through her disguise. Instinctively, she cradled her belly, feeling shaken. She had clearly underestimated the dangers ahead. After taking a moment to recover, Althea noticed that her spirit had decreased by a full 20 points, but she did not dare rest for long. Instead, she began to explore the neighbor's living room. The house's interior was an ostentatious mix of expensive displays and antiques, and Althea immediately began converting these items. She was surprised to find that nearly every piece of the gaudy decor had value, quickly earning several gold and silver coins. Elated by her success, she continued exploring the house, killing a few more servant zombies along the way. Her eyes were drawn to a wall-mounted rack holding a golf club set. She decided the golf driver, or wood one, would be her best weapon, and she took it, placing the rest of the set into her backpack. She then went to the kitchen, taking all the bottled water and long-lasting food. Satisfied with the haul from the first floor, Althea moved to the second, where she entered the sister-in-law's room, a space she recognized by the woman's pathological obsession with the color pink. After rummaging through the woman's belongings, Althea found a collection of jewelry and converted it for a few hundred silver coins. In the master bedroom, she took high-quality coats and leather clothing for both men and women, along with other valuables and watches, earning dozens of gold and hundreds of silver coins. It took her some effort to locate the safety deposit box, which was hidden under a carpet in the study. Instead of opening it, she converted the entire box directly, and was astonished to see her balance increase by scores of gold coins. It seemed politicians were indeed wealthy, and in hard currency. She exited the house through the east wall, using her ladder trick to cross into the next yard. This new yard was full of rockery, so she had to be extra cautious. She repeated her process at this house and 4 others. Althea was grateful for her self-defense training, which she and her brother, Ansel, had learned from her husband, especially after he became a soldier and their fighting knowledge expanded. She had lost count of the number of stalkers she had dealt with using these techniques. What surprised her most was the lack of animal monsters. After the trouble caused by the zombie dogs, she had been fully prepared to encounter more, but she had yet to see any. Then, she noticed the untransformed bodies of guard dogs, rats, and cats. She realized that whatever had turned people into zombies was too potent for most animals to survive. Though saddened, she found a small comfort that they did not have to suffer. Shaking off the thought, Althea continued her scavenging. Using her armor bug, she breezed through 7 more houses before taking another short break and checking her status. She had a total of 89 gold coins, 1,522 silver coins, 2,330 copper coins. Her biggest discovery was a few opened cans of powdered milk and diapers. This reminded her that she needed to prioritize collecting baby products. Another sobering realization was the near-zero survival rate. In all the houses she had visited, she had not found a single other survivor. This thought weighed heavily on her. She wondered if her husband and her brother were facing this same hell, and if her brother had turned into one of the creatures. As he was hundreds of kilometers away, worrying would be useless. She decided the only thing she could do was prepare as much as possible, hoping they would meet in the new world. Just as her scavenging seemed to be going smoothly, she encountered a new and serious challenge at the next house.